right now. I'm just looking at that neurodiverse support framework, and next to it, and I love a good diagram. That's a great diagram. And you have this other one that's right next to it about instructional standards for neurodiverse learners. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's something that I developed. That was actually the first framework that I created. And
Sure.
the reason why I created that was because as a learning designer, um, I feel like you, I'm a good fan of a good framework as well. But as a learning designer, I wanted to create some type of an actionable resource that people could use to almost
Yes.
serve like as a checklist. Like, am I, you know, touching upon all of the critical points or the critical pieces that need to be taken into consideration when I'm designing my learning experiences for a neurodiverse student or for multiple
Yeah.
neurodiverse students.
Yeah.
And that's really sort of where that came from, with the additional component of I was really inspired by the Quality Matters
Sure.
framework.
Sure.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of different institutions who use Quality Matters,
Hmm.
and so that's really kind of what I got inspired by, and I was like, we should be able to
Oh.
create standards around this. I mean, we know what good teaching looks like, and
Hmm.
we know what good teaching looks like when we adapt it to a specific population, such as
Yeah.
neurodiverse learners. So
Yes.
let's create something for that population. So that's how it came to being.
Yeah. Now, if anyone would like to learn more about these, maybe with you like leading a workshop or just additional resources, how would people get in contact with you to do that?
So the best way to reach out to me, you can go to my website or you can just email me directly. The email address is info@megankohler.org.
Wonderful, wonderful. Again, I'd love to dive in even more with that, but I know there's a lot of cool things we could talk about today. Another cool thing is I understand that you have a work that you edited of the multidisciplinary instructional designer. Can you share about like what inspired the creation of that, and maybe what stands out as an example of something you learned along the way, or maybe something that surprised you during that book's creation?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so multidisciplinary instructional designer was something that I co-edited with my friend and colleague Chris Gamrat.
Okay.
And he and I, it was so fun how this idea actually came into being. So how it started basically was he was part of our instructional design professional development group at Penn State.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they felt like the designers in that group could benefit from at that time was enhancing their presentation skills.
Sure. Yep.
And so, knowing my background in theater, Chris reached out to me and he said, Megan, would you be willing to give a presentation highlighting different strategies from your background in theater that instructional designers could use when they're preparing as well as presenting at different conferences? And I was
Yeah.
like, this is a great idea. I love it. And gave the presentation. It was really well received. And then that kind of set to the side for about a year.
Sure. Sure.
And then all of a sudden, one day, Chris reached out to me and he was like, hey, I've really been thinking about that presentation you gave and how well it was received and how much people enjoyed it. And I was like,
Yeah.
it's been in the back of my brain for the past however long as
Hmm.
well. And then we got to talking and we were like, there might be a book in here. And so sat down, started
Hmm.
talking through it in a little bit more detail. And then next thing we know, we're reaching out to Taylor and Francis or Routledge Publishing
Sure.
Company,
Sure.
and they're saying, we love this idea. Let's sign a contract. And then like a year and a half later, the book is published. And we had so many phenomenal contributors.
Yeah.
We had everything from how do you take skills that you learn in the military
Oh my
and to
goodness. Yeah.
apply them to learning design? How
Mhm.
do you take your skills as a feminist
Yeah.
and apply them into learning design? Here's how your skills as a geographer
Mhm.
can apply to learning design. And so, what it does is it takes the perspective of learning design, and it really kind of opens it up and broadens it into this showcase, if you will, to highlight the fact that even though when you come to instructional design, as a lot
Mhm.
of people do, it very much so a discovered field,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that you I remember very specifically, I was told when I first started, like, forget about everything else. This is instructional design. This is what we do. This is how we do
Mhm.
it. So it was very kind of regimented and very rigid. And
Sure.
this book brings into the conversation of, okay, that might be an understanding, but there's so much more out there that we can learn and leverage from all of these other different
Yeah.
pieces.
Yeah.
And so there's a piece in one of the chapters that's in there is a chapter on theater that I co-contributed with Penny Ralstonberg.
Okay.
And we sat down, we were talking about the different types of skills, and one of them is enhanced communication. What
Hmm.
are the different
Yep.
um, games that we play in theater that if somebody applies them in the workplace, they're going to benefit from, right? So the
Yeah.
concept of
Yeah.
yes and. Are you familiar
Yep.
with yes and?
I am, but tell me more. It's a great topic for any of our listeners who may not be familiar with it.
Okay, so yeah, it's a game that is very popularly used in theater, and basically it's the idea that someone will start by saying a sentence or a phrase, and then you just kind of have to keep the continue or the
Hmm.
conversation going. So the idea is that you can't say no, and this is something that's really very heavily used in improv as well. So so the idea when you apply this into the workforce, um, into collaborating or doing consults with faculty members or even
Yeah.
just working with your peers.
Yes.
The idea is that you never want to say, no, I don't agree with that. No,
Hmm.
I don't agree with the direction that that's taking. But instead, it kind of goes back to that strings-based language, right? So instead, it's about saying, yes, I hear you
Hmm.
and I understand what it is that you're saying, and I'm going to build on that. I
Yep.
might have a completely different perspective,
Hmm.
but I'm going to use yes and to create a connection between what you said and what it is that I'm saying,
Yep.
because it's so much easier to get somebody to agree with you and to get buy-in from someone
Yeah.
if you're creating a bridge of acceptance
Hmm.
first, rather than taking the stance of, no, we're on opposite sides of
Yep.
this. So, yeah, it's just it's a really great strategy. I think it has value pretty much
Yeah.
everywhere.
As an instructional designer, I mean, this is true in so many fields, but like I can have the bestest ideas in the world about how a course could go. I'm not saying I do, but let's say, but I could. Um, and if the instructor who's teaching the course, like if that doesn't align with what they have in mind, like it doesn't matter. And so just kind of building
Yeah.
building that rapport and the trust. And I would say after learning about the yes and, um, yeah, in the context of instead of saying no or instead of saying but, I have found that but as I I don't really use it as much in conversation and trying to replace it with an and it just kind of
That's
interesting to see
fantastic.
where it goes. I have to remind myself as I'm talking about like Rich, like sometimes the words but and no like actually can like be what you're going for, but just kind of framing of it's being intentional with it and just
Yes.
building off that conversation.
Absolutely. That's the key. And
Yep.
it's amazing that once you start doing that,
Yeah.
how people respond to you differently. It's
Yes.
really amazing. So there's your tip. Try implementing yes and for even just one or two meetings. I would encourage it much longer than that. But even just try it for one or two meetings and just see how people respond to you. And I think you'll be surprised.
Yeah, fantastic advice, Megan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, this next question that I ask, this could be applied in so many ways. But kind of whatever is kind of jumping out to you. What excites you about the world of teaching and learning, either now or its potential future?
Oh boy, that is a great question, and I have so many thoughts.
Yeah.
Um, I think the thing that I get most excited about is the way that people process information. Like it's
Tell me
fascinating.
more. Tell me more.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like just how one person or how some a piece of information could be put in front of someone
Yeah.
and based on an individual's personal belief system or the environment that they grew up in or
Hmm.
just general like what's going on with them on that day in particular. Do they have a bad morning? Do they have a great morning? Do they,
Yeah.
get a flat tire on the way to class, or their order was wrong at
Hmm.
Starbucks or whatever, and how that impacts you to be present and to be in that learning experience, but then how you end up processing information as a result of all of these other stimuli impacting you.
Yeah.
That to me is just so fascinating. So I'm always just so interested in diving into more of the psychology of how our learning works, how our brains function, and how we process information. It's
Yeah.
incredibly exciting to me. So, yeah.
Your studies in psychology, is that something that was part of your academic training? Is that something you've kind of picked up along the way?
It is something that I would say there has always been a thread of interest in.
Sure, sure.
Um, having having undiagnosed ADHD, I remember even back when I was in college, I
Hmm.
remember taking my very first psychology course and
Yeah.
just sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is so fascinating."
Yeah.
Um, but at the time, didn't feel like that was the pathway for me.
Sure, sure.
Um, and it's been really interesting because as I lean into more of the neurodiversity within my design work, there's a part of me that's like, a PhD in educational psychology could sound
Sure.
really appealing.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So as I think about, let's say, again, my job supporting and collaborating with instructors, offering ideas to instructors, and as someone who's, still an online adjunct instructor, I'm thinking, okay, educational psychology, and especially that, how we're processing information. So let's say that I'm giving a lecture. Let's say I'm designing a class activity. Let's say I'm designing a space. What are maybe some considerations we can think about for, students are going to be processing information differently? And again, this is another topic we could spend like the rest of the day, like geeking out
Oh
about
my
this.
gosh. Yeah, that's actually really hard to unpack in just a few minutes.
Sure,
What to keep in mind? I think I would probably go back to the executive functions as the starting point,
sure,
first and
sure.
foremost.
Yeah,
Just because one of the things that they have found in the research is that it's not just neurodiverse individuals who can have differences in their executive functions, but neurotypicals too, right?
yes,
So,
yes.
everybody has varying degrees of those abilities. So, if we really want to create a dynamic that is supportive and encouraging and inclusive and helps people reach their greatest potential, that I feel like is really the starting point for
Yes,
everyone, right? And
yes.
so in instructional design, we talk a lot about cognitive load,
Hmm.
right? Well,
Hmm.
cognitive load is directly tied to working memory, and working memory is one of the executive functions.
Yeah,
So that would be my go-to answer is just making sure that we're, creating spaces where we think about the executive functions first.
sure, sure. Yeah, maybe as one example, I know something I like to think about is, yeah, I want to present information to students. And how are we doing this in a way that is digestible so that
Hmm.
they have opportunities to maybe I remember something I learned from Christine was her name, the first instructional designer I ever had when I was an instructor. She called them stop and think questions.
Oh.
There's just kind of like, find these just opportunities where we're just kind of like pause, we've digested some information, and let's now just think like what can I maybe do with that? Or just the,
Mm.
pacing, not too fast, not too slow, designing spaces where people might be coming in differently, and just trying to make those spaces supportive for wherever someone's
Yeah.
at to best take in information.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in addition to the strategies that you mentioned, see,
Yeah.
there was your yes and.
Yes, and
Um, I would also add to that, so you talked sort of chunking, right? Chunking is definitely something
Yep.
that we should also be taking into consideration. And those stop and pause, I mean, that really speaks to the concept of reflection, right?
Yes. Oh
And
my goodness,
reflection,
yes.
oh my gosh, we absolutely need to be integrating that into our spaces. Yeah, there's just I feel like everybody would benefit if they would take those moments of pause and reflect and
Hmm.
process this a little bit before we move forward with things.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot that would be changed if we would take those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, Join us for the conclusion of our conversation as Megan makes connections to storytelling.